I inherited a cabin in the woods. Hey Reddit, long-time lurker, first-time poster here. I never thought I'd be the one sharing a story, but something's been weighing on me, and I need to get it off my chest. A few weeks ago, I inherited a cabin in the Appalachian Mountains from a family member I've never even heard of. The letter from the lawyer was vague and old-fashioned, with no address, just landmarks to follow. Against my better judgment, I decided to come out here, see what I'd been left, and figure out what to do with it. Now, I'm sitting in a small diner in town, the only place with Wi-Fi for miles, typing this out over a cup of coffee that's gone cold. I've been keeping a journal since I arrived, and I thought sharing it here might help me make sense of everything. Or maybe someone here will see something I've missed because, honestly, I can't tell if I'm imagining things or if something's actually wrong. Here's what I wrote over the first few days. Day 1. I made it to the cabin this afternoon after a long, winding drive through the mountains. The last 20 miles felt like stepping back in time. No cell service, no GPS, just narrow dirt roads and towering trees. I kept expecting to pass a house or a sign of life, but there was nothing. Just trees so thick they blocked out the sun. When I finally reached the cabin, it was like stumbling across a secret that had been lost to time. It's old, but solid, with dark weathered wood and a steep, pitched roof covered in moss. Ivy has claimed one side of the house, creeping up to the second story. The windows are small and uneven, with glass so warped it makes the light bend in strange ways. It's the kind of place that feels like it's been forgotten by the world. Inside, it's strangely intact. The furniture looks handmade. Heavy wooden tables and chairs that have probably been here since the place was built. There's a fireplace big enough to stand in, and the walls are lined with shelves full of old books and jars whose contents I can't identify. The whole place smells like damp wood and something faintly metallic, like an old penny. I spent most of the day unpacking and getting the fireplace going. As night fell, the silence outside became overwhelming. I thought being out here might feel peaceful, but instead, it feels like the quiet is pressing in on me. It's hard to explain, but I keep getting this feeling that the cabin doesn't quite belong here. Or maybe I don't. The quiet is so thick, it's almost like the house itself is waiting for something. I'm probably just imagining things, but it's a strange kind of stillness, like the house is holding its breath. I keep telling myself it's just an old cabin, but something feels off about it. I can't shake the feeling that this place has been waiting for someone, maybe me. Day 2. I woke up to strange light streaming through the windows, more shadows than sunlight. I can't explain it, but the light here feels different. Like it doesn't quite reach the ground the way it should. The forest around the cabin looks darker in the daylight than it should, the trees casting long, claw-like shadows even in the early morning. I decided to explore the woods to get my bearings, but the deeper I went, the stranger it felt. The trees are massive, their trunks gnarled and twisted like they've been growing wrong for decades. The air feels heavy, like it's thick with humidity, even though it's cool outside. I thought I heard something following me at one point, a faint rustling, like footsteps in the leaves. But when I turned around, nothing was there. I tried to laugh it off, but it wasn't funny. The silence is so absolute that any sound feels unnatural, like it doesn't belong. When I got back to the cabin, I found the front door slightly ajar. I know I shut it before I left, there's no question about that. I checked the whole house, but nothing seemed out of place. Still, it left me uneasy. After locking up again, I noticed a faint smell of wood smoke coming from the fireplace. The strange thing is, I hadn't lit it that morning. There was no sign of embers or ashes, but the smell was strong, like someone had been burning wood just minutes before. The door being open, I don't know what to think about that. Maybe the latch didn't catch, but I swear I locked it. And the smell of smoke? I don't even know where to start with that. The fireplace was cold when I checked, but the smell was so strong it lingered for hours. I can't shake the feeling that someone or something was in the house while I was gone, but there was no sign of a break-in, and nothing was missing or moved. Still, it feels wrong, like the house itself is messing with me, testing me. And the woods? I don't know what it is about them, but they feel alive. Not in the way nature usually does, but in a way that makes me feel like I don't belong here. I keep hearing faint sounds, catching movement out of the corner of my eye. It's like the forest is keeping tabs on me. I don't know if I'm just letting my imagination get the better of me, but I don't like it, not one bit. Day 3. I don't know how to explain this, but the woods feel different today, closer. The trees seem denser, like they're creeping inward. The paths I walked yesterday are harder to find, and when I tried to retrace my steps, I kept ending up back where I started. I spent most of the morning trying to convince myself it's just my imagination. Then I noticed something else. The air smells faintly like iron, strongest near the shed out back. I almost went to check it out, but I couldn't bring myself to open the door. Something about that shed feels wrong. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't take the isolation anymore. I decided to drive into town for supplies and to get a break from the cabin. The town's tiny, just a few old buildings clustered along a single main road. There's a gas station, a general store, and this diner where I'm sitting now. The people here are polite but distant. When I mentioned the cabin to the waitress, she gave me this strange look, like she knew something I didn't. "You be careful out there, hun," was all she said, but the way she said it gave me chills. The woods are closer today, and it feels like they're closing in. The paths don't make sense anymore. I keep walking in circles, and every time I turn around, it feels like I'm farther from the cabin than I should be. It's like the trees are pulling me in, not letting me leave. The shed is bothering me. It feels like something's in there, or like it's waiting for me to open it. I don't know what's inside, but I'm not ready to find out. The town, I'm not sure what to make of it. The waitress's warning sticks with me. It wasn't just a casual be safe thing. There's something about it, something off. The people here aren't outright unfriendly, but there's this unspoken distance. I'm starting to wonder if they know more than they're letting on. I'm starting to feel like the cabin and the woods have a way of making things feel wrong, like they're altering reality in some way. It's hard to describe, but I keep getting the sense that things are changing when I'm not looking. Maybe it's just isolation getting to me, but I don't think so. That's all for now. I don't know if I'll stay at the cabin much longer, but if anything else happens, I'll update. If anyone's been through something similar or has advice, I'd love to hear it. I don't know what's real anymore, but maybe someone here can help me figure it out. I'm back, and I know I owe you all an explanation. After my last post, I bolted from the diner without responding to a single comment. At the time, I thought I was being paranoid, that maybe I just needed to clear my head. But looking back now, I think I was running. Not from the town, not from the cabin, but from the feeling that something was closing in. I told myself I'd come back, that I'd sit down and properly respond when I had the time. But the truth is, I didn't want to face your questions or your answers, because acknowledging it, writing it down again, made it feel real. And I didn't want it to be real. I've spent the last few days trying to convince myself that what I saw, what I felt, could be explained. But I can't. The forest, the clearing, it's all still here, pressing on the edges of my mind. I can't escape it, not in the cabin, not even in the town. I'm writing this now because I can't keep it inside anymore. The fear, the questions, the need to understand, it's all too much. I don't know if I'm posting this because I want answers or because I'm hoping someone will tell me I'm not crazy. Maybe it's both. I didn't respond before, but I will this time. I'll stick around, no matter how hard it gets to read what you all have to say, because I think I need to know. I need to know what's happening to me before it's too late. Looking back on days 4 and 5, I realize how much I let my guard down. At the time, everything felt normal, calm even. I convinced myself the odd things I'd experienced were just my imagination. The open door on day 2, the smell of smoke that had no source, the uneasy vibe of the forest. I kept telling myself they had logical explanations because it was easier to believe that than to face the alternative. I told myself the cabin wasn't creepy, just old, and the forest wasn't watching me, just unfamiliar. I even began to enjoy the solitude. I started repairing the house, reading on the porch, and thinking the isolation was helping me reset. I genuinely believed the worst was in my head, that I was overreacting. But that sense of calm, it wasn't peace. It was the eye of the storm. Day 6 was when it all fell apart. I don't know what possessed me to go into the woods today. Something about the morning was wrong from the start. The light filtering through the windows had that odd quality again, making the dust in the air look like it was suspended in amber. It felt too quiet outside, like the world was holding its breath. I should have stayed inside, but the cabin wasn't a refuge anymore. The walls felt too close, the silence too loud. Every creak of the old wood made my skin crawl. So I grabbed my bag, stuffed it with water and a flashlight, and stepped out onto the porch. The forest loomed around me, its twisted branches clutching at the gray sky. The air was thick and damp, clinging to my skin like a second layer. I told myself I just needed to clear my head, to prove to myself the woods were just woods. But they aren't. At first it was uneventful. The trails were overgrown, but they were there, faint paths carved by animals or long-forgotten footsteps. The ground was soft with moss, muffling my steps. I kept telling myself this was fine, that I'd turn back after an hour or so. Then the forest started to change. The trees grew closer together. their trunks twisted and leaning inward, their branches tangling above me to block out the light. The air became heavier, carrying a faint metallic tang that turned my stomach. The moss underfoot gave way to bare dirt, dry and cracked as if it hadn't seen rain in years. I don't know when I first noticed the carvings. They were subtle at first, marks in the bark that could have been the result of animals or weather, but the deeper I went, the more deliberate they became. Spirals, jagged lines, and shapes that made my head hurt if I looked at them too long. And then there were the bones, tiny piles scattered along the trail, small and fragile, like bird bones, but arranged too neatly to be natural. I stepped around them, careful not to disturb the patterns. The back of my neck prickled, like someone was watching me, but every time I turned around, there was nothing, just trees. By the time I stumbled into the clearing, I was ready to turn back, but the moment I saw it, my feet froze. The clearing wasn't right. The ground was packed dirt, perfectly circular, surrounded by trees that leaned inward like they were bowing. In the center was a structure, a pile of sticks and stones that looked like it had been thrown together by a madman. The angles were wrong, almost impossible, and staring at it made my vision blur, like my brain couldn't process it. The air was electric, buzzing faintly against my skin. Around the edges of the clearing were more piles of bones, larger now, human-sized. Symbols were etched into the dirt, their lines so precise they could have been cut with a blade. And then I heard it. At first, it was just a low rumble, so deep I felt it in my chest more than I heard it. I told myself it was thunder, but the sky above was gray and still. The sound grew louder, more distinct, a guttural, rasping noise that made my skin crawl. I scanned the tree line, and that's when I saw movement, shapes, dark and shifting, slipping between the trees like shadows that didn't belong. I couldn't tell how many there were. They moved too fast, too fluid, like they weren't bound by the rules of this world. Then they stepped into the clearing, people, or something that used to be people. They wore dark robes that hung from their bodies like wet paper, their faces hidden in shadow. They didn't speak, but I could feel their attention on me, their collective gaze pressing down like a physical weight. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. And then, from behind the altar, it appeared. I don't have words for it. I've tried to put it into language, but nothing fits. It was tall, taller than any human has a right to be, but wrong, like its limbs had been stretched too far. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, and its face, if you could call it a face, was a hollow mask, featureless, except for the faint impression of eyes. It moved like it was gliding, its body too smooth, too deliberate. The air around it seemed to ripple, like the space it occupied didn't want it there. The robed figures began to hum, a low, droning sound that seemed to vibrate through my skull. I wanted to cover my ears, but my arms wouldn't obey. The thing behind the altar turned its hollow face toward me, and in that moment, I swear I felt it inside my mind, sifting through my thoughts like they were pages in a book. I don't remember running. I don't remember how I got back to the cabin. The next thing I knew, I was inside. The door locked, my back pressed against it as I gasped for air. The silence inside was deafening, but I knew it wasn't safe. Not anymore. The woods aren't just alive, they're waiting. And I think they're waiting for me. I'm posting this from the cabin. I don't even know if it'll go through. The signal's weak, flickering in and out like everything else around here. I can't bring myself to leave, not after what happened. The idea of stepping outside, of being exposed to whatever's out there, makes my stomach churn. Every creak of the wood, every gust of wind against the windows feels like it's something waiting to get in. Or maybe it already is in, and I just can't see it yet. I'm terrified. But here's the thing I can't shake. I need to know. I need to understand what I saw out there, what's happening in these woods. If I don't, it's going to eat me alive. Is it because I'm scared of losing my mind? Maybe. Or maybe it's something worse. Maybe it's the same pull that led me into the woods this morning. I don't know what I'm going to do. Stay inside? Try to barricade myself and wait for what though? Or go back out there and see if I can find more clues, answers, anything that makes this make sense? The idea of walking back into those trees makes my throat tighten, but so does the thought of sitting here and doing nothing. It feels like the forest isn't just waiting for me, it's calling me. I'll respond to comments if I can. I don't know when or if I'll be able to leave again. If anyone has any idea what this could be, what I saw, what's happening, please tell me. I need something to hold on to, anything. For now, I'm staying put, but I don't think it's going to let me stay hidden for long. Well, that was pretty much it. I hope you liked the story till then. Bye-bye.